Most of us at some point have heard the phrase, there's no free lunch. Few of us have thought much about why that might be true. Our next guest has a book that compiles 250 economic truths, and its title, There's No Free Lunch. David Bahnsen is managing partner and founder of the Bahnsen Group. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I appreciate you having me. It's wonderful to be with you.
So basically, there's no free lunch. We've heard that for years and years. You decided to make that the title of the book. Why?
Well, obviously, I stole the expression to some degree from Milton Friedman, who frequently would lecture and write essays around the topic of there being no free lunch. And anytime that sort of euphemism is used in economics, it's a way of talking about the principle or the law of trade-offs. And trade-offs are themselves a reflection of the law of scarcity. The economics is essentially the study of human action around scarce resources. And to the degree that we trade with one another, free exchange involves a give and a take. And so there's no free lunch refers to the fact that there are trade-offs in what we seek to do, that a result in which I both get something and then get something doesn't exist. We get and we give in exchange, but we do so in freedom. We do so in self-interest, and we do so in a manner that meets the needs of our individual self, our families, our loved ones, and drives together form a social cooperation that has made liberal society possible.
Your book compiles 250 of these basic economic truths together. I imagine that some people will read that and say, oh my gosh, an economics textbook with charts and graphs. I don't want to have to sit through that like I did back in college. My guess is this is not that sort of book.
Well, it definitely isn't. And it's funny you say that, because there are actually no charts and graphs. And I run a large private wealth management firm for my career. And I wrote a book on dividend growth investing that was filled with like 40 charts and graphs. And I specifically decided that the economics textbook didn't need what an investment book needed, because I believe so seriously that economics is primarily about the human person. And so 250 economic truths sounds like a lot to chew, but it's really written to be a sort of daily economic reflection, almost like a devotional, if you will. And I take a quote from generally a pretty well-known, famous economist, sometimes one who's 300 years old, sometimes one who's a contemporary. And then I offer my own editorial or commentary on that quote, and divide it all up by category. So we have it compartmentalized so people can go study all these truisms in the field of social organization or in the space of taxes or what have you. And so it's kind of topically organized and hopefully not too much to chew.
Some people are going to hear what we're saying and think, oh, this still sounds kind of like it's for economics wonky type people. Why is this a book that you think people who aren't just economically inclined ought to take a look at?
It's interesting. I really did write the book not to go persuade socialists and collectivists and significant progressives. I would love it if it did that, but that wasn't the target audience, that it would be a work of revolutionary persuasion. And I also didn't write it for other financial professionals or economic academics. I wrote it for people who have a general instinct in favor of free enterprise, that their natural impulse is favorable to free market economics, but that they're not well versed in it. They're not necessarily able to defend it foundationally or logically. And I want to give people the foundational truths and a basis for reasoning that helps them defend things that they are otherwise quite supportive of instinctively. I think our instincts are not going to be adequate for the intellectual assault that is taking place on free enterprise and on the whole concept of a free and liberal society now. And so that's the intent of the book, and the audience hopefully will find it to be very chewable for their level of comprehension.
The book, once again, is titled There's No Free Lunch. Its author, we're chatting with him. He is David Bahnsen of the Bahnsen Group. In some of the promotional material about this book, it said that you basically need to know these economic truths to understand how to address the challenges of today. Why so?
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there is now a rising popularity around certain aspects of economic thinking that were previously considered radical and off limits. The Marxist revolutionaries were supporting a greater collectivist state 30, 40, 50 years ago, but the faculty lounges of American universities were not. I think what you have now is a general belief, a general acceptance that is becoming particularly commonplace amongst young adults, that free enterprise is intrinsically bruised and beaten, and that the soft hand of a good central planner, no one's going to be in favor of a totalitarian revolutionary, but maybe one with an Ivy League degree who can come in with the right level of sophistication and central planning gravitas. That may be just what the doctor ordered to stir the needs and manage the affairs of society. It is, of course, the viewpoint of all of us who believe in the Lockean liberal order, who believe in Friedrich Hayek's notion of the fatal conceit that such a person doesn't exist. There is not an elite class who has the knowledge to properly steward the affairs of society. And I think we need a better intellectual foundation for the task at hand. If we want to make an argument in the public square about tax policy, about minimum wage laws, about trade policy, there's room for disagreement on all these issues, but we're not even going to be invited to the party if we're not able to defend the basic principles of free enterprise.
Your book, I suspect, is not necessarily on this topic, but based on what you've just said, do you think there might be an increased openness to this idea after people have spent months and months questioning what the experts have said about COVID-19 and dealing with the pandemic? Might they be saying, well, if I'm questioning experts on that, maybe I should start questioning some of these experts who want to run the economy?
I sure hope that there would be. And I think it's a wonderful point. Post-financial crisis, even though I believe this was wrong-headed, it was still emotionally understandable that there were people who were questioning markets. And they believed the financial crisis to be a failure of free markets, even though I don't think it was anything like that. However, the reality is that the COVID moment has done the opposite. The COVID moment has called into question the wisdom of the expert class and the sort of anointed elite leadership class that many would be very content to give command control of the economy to. And to the degree that people right now are skeptical of their ability to steward such based on their clear inability to steward a public health crisis, I want to take advantage of that skepticism to allow people to revisit the premises that go into it. What do we believe about a properly ordered society? What do we believe about spontaneous order, about individual responsibility, about the allocation of resources, and about a framework for risk and reward? And I don't think that the anointed class is able to deliver on those things. And I think more and more people in this COVID moment, to your point, ought to be and likely are questioning such a thing.
We've already talked to some extent about the phrase, there's no free lunch, that lends itself as the title of the book. We're not going to get into all 250 economic truths. People have to get the book to get there. But why don't we leave folks with maybe one more of your truths that you spell out and what you have to say about it?
I think that I built a collection of truths around the entire theme of human action. And this sort of what von Mises referred to as the praxeology is one of the most important takeaways of the book for me. I want people to think of economics not as charts and graphs, as you alluded to earlier, not as mathematical theorems, and certainly not as a mere application of a political intent. I want people to think of economics fundamentally as anthropological. the study of the human person. And because I believe that humans were created rationally and have the capacity for creativity, for innovation, for productivity, I think that that truism completely separates our understanding of economics from that understanding central planners bring to the party. Human action and the putting the human person front and center is really, to me, one of the most important takeaways of the book.
Well, we have just scratched the surface. If you get the book, you can learn about 250 economic truths. The title of the book, once again, There's No Free Lunch. Its author is David Bahnsen, and that last name is spelled Bahnsen. David, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And nofreeluncheconomics.com might be a better way for them to remember than my last name. And so nofreeluncheconomics.com does provide an awful lot of information and resource. And I certainly appreciate you having me on today.